So the BBC have done it again. It's not like the BBC to half-bake the truth, is it? Once again, they haven't been impartial. This whole video is about BBC Verify putting out incorrect figures based on the farm tax. And I'm actually featuring a friend of mine in this video called Charles. He is absolutely fantastic at getting the point across of factual information about things like this. So he's a farmer himself. I always go to him for any advice if I need anything on the farm tax because he's really good at that. So here's Charles.
It's been 12 months since the government announced their inheritance tax reforms, and amongst all the arguing between farmers and politicians, the BBC decided to do their own analysis of the figures. Now, given that at the time the BBC's figures were questioned by farmers, and lately the BBC have been questioned about their reliability and impartiality, I thought it might be worth doing a Verify video on BBC Verify. So if we go into their report, when they're referring to the number of farms that could be affected by this policy change, they quote, "Our analysis found that the figure was likely to be somewhere closer to the number provided by the government, about 500 estates per year, and that remains our assessment." Well, I'm not surprised that is the figure that the BBC came up with, because that is the figure the government will have given them. And that is based on historic Treasury data. And the only people to have access to that are the Treasury themselves and Centax, the people who advised the government on tax policy and helped put together these reforms. Now, Centax defended the government in select committee hearings throughout about these policy reforms, but then at a later date they went back and reanalysed their own figures and actually found that they were wrong. Now, it was probably more likely to be up to nearer 600 farmers that could be affected by the time they took into account business property relief as well as agricultural property relief. In the report, the BBC go on to say that the government says it wants to make the inheritance tax system fairer and discourage wealthy people from investing in land solely to avoid tax. And that's what we all want. But when Centax went and looked at their figures again, they concluded that of the 600 possible farms that could be affected by these reforms, 205 were likely to be small family farms. And a third are likely to be passive investors. They're people that have the right to claim agricultural property relief, but are not actively farming themselves, and farming is not their main source of income. So it's people that could have inherited a bit of land, have a bit of land or agricultural assets, or may have invested in some purely to avoid paying tax. The BBC also make reference to the fact that 3/4 of farmers will not be impacted by these reforms. It says the Environment Secretary Steve Reeder said 3/4 of farmers will pay nothing as a result of these changes. Well, let's dig down into these figures and see where that 3/4 comes from. The figures used by the BBC were for the most recent government data, which was from the year 2021-2022, when there was 1,730 claims for inheritance tax relief. And of those, 462 were valued over £1 million. So 23% of all the claims made in that year would be eligible for inheritance tax should they be in this year's policy. Now, let's look at those 1,730 claims in a bit more detail. 27% of them were under the value of £250,000. Now, in today's market, that's not even going to buy you an average house. And if it was bare land, maybe up to 25 acres, that is not a viable farming business. If we look at the next category, 23% of claims were for between £250,000 and £500,000. That might buy you a nice house with a few acres of land. You could keep a few pet sheep or a cow. Or if it was bare land, maybe anywhere 25 up to 50 acres. Again, not a viable farming business. These are, at best, hobby farmers and lifestyle farmers. Their main source of income is not from agriculture. The land might be for their own personal use, or they might be rolling it into larger farming businesses for them to farm. The next category up, another 23% of farm claims were from £500,000 to £1 million. I still question if they are viable standalone farming businesses, but for the sake of these calculations, we're going to leave them in. So, if we get rid of all the estates that aren't actually farming businesses, we then have 462 claims out of 854. And all of a sudden, it's 54% of farmers that are going to be impacted by these inheritance tax reforms. But let's not forget, Syntax went back and readdressed the values, and they believed it could have been nearer to 600 farms that are impacted. So if we now say 600 out of 854, all of a sudden we're up to 70% of farms that are going to be impacted by these changes. And that is why there's uproar in the industry. That is why farmers are panicking. They're not investing and agriculture is stagnating. If these policies don't change, we're going to see huge consequences on farming, on the countryside, but also on food production and food security here in the UK. And that is why the government have got to stop and take a look at these figures again and take a look at the impact it could have on our industry for the sake of food and food security. Because let's not forget what Starmer said himself only a couple of years ago.
Losing a farm is not like losing any other business. It can't come back.
And then at the same time, he was using BBC Verify, who were using his figures to back up his policy to make out that they were right. Something that many media outlets picked up on and questioned the BBC's impartiality. So, BBC, that is why your homework simply isn't good enough.
So that was Charles, and what a fantastic video. I really wanted to send my appreciation to Charles for letting me use this video as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button, like the post and share the post, because you wouldn't believe actually just how amazing that is for the algorithmic boost to spread the word of what we're doing. And it really, really helps me. So thank you. If you're not already, you can sign up to my membership. It's going to be discounts on merch, etc. all coming up in the future. So become part of the team and join the food revolution. Hit that membership button now. I'll put all the things in the description. Have a great evening and I'll catch you soon.